Hello and welcome to the Giant Talk podcast, brought to you by both There Be Giants and Momentous. If you've tuned in before, you'll notice we're having a bit of an upgrade. Previously, Giant Talk has been about all things OKRs, but now our focus is expanding to how strategy can be connected to results in all types of organisations. Our back catalogue is still available, so if you want to check that out for more detailed OKR episodes, then you'll find what you need there. In the meantime, Roger and James are delighted that you're here, and if you want to contact us, you can drop us a note at growth@therebegiants.com. Enjoy.
Hi, so welcome to this next episode of Giant Talk with myself, James Perriman.
And myself, Roger Longdon.
Fantastic. Now, today we're joined by a brilliant guest. It's not my place to introduce him or tell you all about him. Simon, over to you. Tell us a bit about you and what you do.
Okay, so Simon Norrie from a company called Custerian. I think the first thing I would say is that's obviously a boutique consultancy, but I've spent probably most of my career working in organisations. And if I was to sort of go, what is it I'm interested in? It's about using data to understand and affect customer and consumer behaviour. So that's what I'm really interested in. And I've performed a number of different roles across a lot of different organisations, but a lot of it has always been about trying to understand the why of an organisation and then make sure it runs through the sort of what and how of the organisation, which is where I came across Roger, actually, which is part of the work that was done around OKRs and those types of things.
Fab. Thank you, Simon. So tell us a bit around some of those organisations then, and kind of what were you there to deliver, to work on with them, to help them with?
So I think in terms of the working life, as it were, and I don't class consultancy as not working life, by the way, it's obviously a different context when you amble up to an organisation against a relatively clear brief. Within organisations, it was always about trying to go, look, we have got a stated proposition. Do we understand that proposition clearly enough that we can translate it through an organisation into something that people can buy? So it was all around using data to understand that. So I was there in the early days of database and data-led marketing. When we look at that, latterly, how that comes into the organisations we deal with, and Custerian is customer experiences, which it was formed out of, but we're not a customer experience business. We use it as a tool set. Really what we're trying to do with our organisation currently is leave colleagues more capable of delivering the outcome that we've been set as a challenge to help the company deliver. So that usually is something around, look, this program started to fail, or we don't understand in terms of what we're trying to do for customers, or we don't understand where this project is. And usually our role is to go into the organisation, and what we believe fundamentally is the people in that organisation are the most capable people, and there's usually something that's broken down in that communication chain. But it's a practical, hands-on way of enabling colleagues to deliver change in organisations, to hit organisational goals. We usually say commercial goals quite quickly, by the way. But, you know, businesses exist for profit, and we never forget that.
And it's interesting, just that word proposition obviously can mean a number of different things to different people, but I'm taking it in the spirit of a commercial proposition that's out there for customers to engage with and purchase.
Yeah, I think I've had some interesting conversations with Roger about this in the past, actually, which is, I mean, I'm a marketeer and I worked in an agency. So for my sins, I have developed a number of different labels for things over the time in a desperate attempt to sell products and services. I think from my point of view, when you look at things like North Star, purpose, whys, and proposition, I always boil them down to, do you understand what's unique and different about your organisation so that you convert that into products and services that can be put through channels that people can consume with the support of colleagues in organisations? So I have that sort of broad church on it, which is, okay, how are you going to deliver value in the market that you exist in? So that's what I mean by proposition. And again, that's probably why we butted up against OKRs. How do I lift people's heads up to look for things? So,
yeah, because understanding that and getting really clear about the purpose of the organisation is the first step in kind of starting to build alignment. And you know, you've already said that your work is about helping people to navigate their way through change and deliver the absolute best, service or product or whatever that they can do. You know, the whole essence of Custerian is it's very much about looking at things from the customer's perspective, isn't it? And how I guess the thing that always struck me about you, Simon, and the reason why we've talked for many years is you get the strategy side of things, you get how important that is, but you see the link, the chain, all the way through to the customer experience, don't you? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think for us, it's that step through. I mean, Simon Sinek's a famous one, and I used to be a little bit dismissive about this because I was like probably going, well, at the end of the day, let's just get Kotler out, everybody. But I think there is a beautiful simplicity in if you don't understand the why, how are you going to understand the what to convert into the how? So how are you going to run through that process of how am I going to create a product and service to deliver into what market through what channels, served by what operating model? And one of the things, and we touched on this in the preamble to this, and it's something that Roger spends a lot of time in, and I think in terms of learning and development, a crucial area in it is you go, if the people in an organisation don't understand what the organisation is trying to do, how are they going to know how to go about doing it? And most people arrive at work well-intentioned, so if you don't tell them, they'll start inventing stuff.
Yeah,
because they want to get on and want to create an enjoyable place to work. So it's a really interesting, that alignment word's a very powerful one that I think people trot out but don't fundamentally understand, because the question is alignment to what?
Exactly. And how clear is that? Yeah. Not just in terms of the top level, but how clear is their function, role, their team's role, their individual role. It's kind of, I think of it as a big pie, and the slice gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but it's still part of that big pie, isn't it? And it's still, you put all those pieces together and it still creates one big picture. I remember back in my days in corporate life, leading an engineering and logistics division, and it was so difficult to help the guys who were configuring equipment and shipping it out, just how important their link in the chain was, and that if they didn't get it right, there were, there'd be a bank branch that couldn't open the following day because the equipment hadn't been configured correctly or even installed or wasn't there on time or something like that. So not only is it customer impact, there's also commercial impact because there'll be penalties as well. But it was so important for me to get them to understand the value of the work that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, interestingly, my co-founder, Nicola Collister, she talks a lot about relay races. And this, it's obvious when it gets said, but, if you don't understand that business is a relay race, then how do you know what baton you're going to pass to who when?
Yeah.
And how do you understand what the penalties are for arriving late to the handover or dropping the baton in the handover? And when you look at breaking organisations down, and we talked about what role do you provide, one of the things we say to people is, look, and customer journey is a tool for this, but I think people get obsessed with the tool and go, no, what you're trying to do is go, where are all the major handovers between you stating what it is you're going to do for somebody and them experiencing it? Where are all those handovers? Because as soon as there's a handover, that's where waste is going to start to occur, or the opportunity to improve is going to start to occur. Within functions, there's opportunity, but it's the transitions between these functions as the baton's getting passed. So you asked at the start there, James, what is one of the things you do with organisations? Well, we're trying to make sure we understand where the batons are getting passed. Do they understand who to and in what condition? So,
and is there, I'm reflecting like Roger has been on kind of work that I've done with organisations around, particularly around customer experience, and when customer experience outcomes were successful, there was always a conversation that led back to the strategy. And as thinking about that, as you're talking about the baton analogy, that it's good for people to understand, who am I taking the baton from, or batons, who am I giving it to next? But the business strategy or strategies have to allow that to happen, don't they? So it can be great to have a strong commercial strategy, and this is what we want to achieve and our big goals. But if the IT strategy isn't delivering the capability to do that, and the HR recruitment strategy isn't delivering the right people to use that new tech, and therefore enabling the sales team to go out and do what they need to do, then that makes the baton passing harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting. I've got a little bit of a soapbox, but I won't pull it out too far, and I won't stand on it for too long. I think the less clear you are about your why, your proposition or your purpose, the more likely you are to end up with a tail wag dog scenario. And the biggest tail that wags the dog quite often in business is technology, right? So, I've put this system in, which comes with these processes, which denotes this way of working, which means I need these people sat in these structures with these skills, monitored by these metrics. And if you think about that could work, but it is highly likely to not work. And it's why you get things in business, irrespective of whether it's customer experience or not, of people sitting in teams going, look, I know I'm having to ask you details for the fourth time, but that's because that's what the system needs me to do. Rather than a simple way around, which is, look, I'll ask for it once and propagate it in the system. So there are a number of reasons why being really clear about what the overall purpose of an organisation is good. It's because you know what race you're driving. You know whether is it 100-metre relay, is it 400-metre relay? You know, if we're going to go mountaineering, is it the top of Everest or is it a walk down a canal towpath? It sets the tone that you can align round, and it stops you being distracted by other things that might be seen as silver bullets or the latest fad from the thing that's core and fundamental to you, which is why we are all here, everybody. This is what we are here to do.
So I'm curious, in your experience, when you've encountered those, or rather observed those challenges which organisations have been facing, do you think that's a leadership problem or a strategy problem?
As a slight aside, I had a real conversation with somebody who'd worked in one of these high-performance marginal gains businesses last week, and they were talking about football. I don't follow football, by the way. This is not a reference to last night. But I think in those instances where there's a breakdown in a chain, then it's a leadership issue at some point, because it's either their responsibility to set the conditions or it's their responsibility to see that it's going wrong. And that's that responsible, accountable bit, isn't it? Which is, look, I'm accountable for ensuring you're clear about your job so that you can responsibly carry it out. But I do think it's a leadership issue. And I think it comes back to them not themselves understanding what the purpose of the organisation is, or that gets wrapped up in the broad term of politics. They're trying to do something else. They're trying to build their empire, or they're trying to lead their sort of legacy. And a lot of it might not be badly intentioned, by the way. If I get brought in from another company because I've been successful, I may think implicitly, you've brought me in to do what I was doing before, so I'm going to carry on doing it. And I'm going to map that onto the organisation. But that's a very long answer to a simple question, Roger. It's always the leadership. Because to be clear about this. So.
I'd be inclined to agree with you on that, because at the end of the day, if it's a strategy problem, who's responsible for strategy?
Yeah,
it's leadership.
Yeah.
So I think all roads lead back to there. It's their job to create that clarity. It's their job to understand, how to align, and therefore then do that. But I won't pull out my soapbox about how important alignment is in organisations, or how undervalued it is just at this moment in time.
Yeah, there's time for that, Roger. There's time for that. Simon, were there other symptoms you were seeing? So, you mentioned a couple in there and touched on technology. Were there other things that you went in and observed from those kind of initial conversations with leaders, with senior managers, with other parts of the organisation, or were there symptoms that the business was seeing in its metrics and its KPIs and its performance measures?
Yeah, so there's probably, the first thing to caveat with this is we're a sort of change and problem solving company. So we don't tend to get called and go, everything's going amazingly, can you help us out? That does occasionally happen, but that's usually high contact situations. And we've done some work around that. But in general, it's, Houston, there's a problem. Can we get somebody to come in and look at the problem? I think there's a couple of things that tend to go into there. One is there isn't really a clear view on what the strategy or the purpose of the organisation is. The layer that exists below that is there might be a clear view of it, but there's not a belief in their ability to deliver it. And we've seen that, which is, I know what they've said the strategy is, but I don't believe fundamentally we can deliver this strategy. And then you get into some of the things that go, which are just standard human behavioural, which get talked a lot. And you'll have come across it in the learning and development arena, and Roger will have come across this. In any organisation, there's I'm a massive advocate of this. I'm really enthusiastic for change and driving change. They need sort of directed. There's then the sort of detractor, but there's the assassin version of a detractor whose genuine job is to try and pull the wall down every time they come up against the wall. And then in the middle, you'll have these groups of people looking to see which way it goes. So quite often you get into that quite quickly, which is, okay, if there isn't a clear strategy or there's not a belief in the strategy, then what you've got within the teams is right, which way is the wind blowing and where is it that we need to go? The other layer that exists in that is a lot of well-intentioned activities that may actually not be contributing to the purpose of the organisation. And one of the things that we do say to people is, and this is a bit like brand or purpose, most organisations, if they haven't got a clearly laid out strategy and direction, they'll have invented one themselves and they'll be getting on with it. Right? And that may or may not be aligned to the commercial purpose and may or might not be producing waste. So they're this sort of bucket that goes into not a clear strategy, a lack of belief in the strategy, people in the organisation just creating things that they think would serve some sort of purpose, be that towards a strategy or not.
Yeah. The thing that struck me about what you just said there was kind of those in the middle that kind of hedge their bets just to see which way the wind is blowing and then, go that way. Essentially what we're talking about there is buy-in, isn't it? We're looking to win them over. We're looking to get their buy-in. So what do you think is the biggest misconception that leadership teams have about gaining that buy-in and what buy-in really is?
So that's a really interesting question, and I'm going to try and not give it... So the very short answer to that, as I think there's an issue with a lot of companies that feel they may get into conflict with the teams. Right, so if they're trying to get them to do something they don't want them to do, and there's always an assumption when companies get into some level of stagnation that there's some level of sort of dispute going on between the colleagues and the management team. And we got all those stories about running into treacle, acts as a barrier between the board and the colleagues and things like that. So there's those types of things that I think that go on with organisations that you see as issues with them. I think some of the other one is, and it's a bit of a broken record, this, if you're not clear about what your strategy is, how are you going to feel confident in standing up and telling your teams what your strategy is? Yeah. But what most people are looking for in organisations is, can you just give me a sense of direction, clearly enough so I understand my role in it, so that I can contribute to it, because contributing to something makes me feel good about myself. Yeah. So that's where it's sort of hubbing around, I think, Roger.
Yeah. And I've seen this in action. I saw it in action earlier in the week, to be honest. Yeah. I was working with some clients and we got to the stage where they were bringing a wider group into the process of, building the alignment for the organisation. So working out what needed to be done on a more tactical sort of 3-month level. And in advance, when they were working through who it was that was on the list to be invited in, they did point out a couple that could be detractors, that have been kind of a bit like sticky in the muds in the past. But the way I said, just believe in the process, okay? Believe in the process. And because of the work that I'd got the leadership team to do beforehand, which was to do the strategy mapping and then define what the 18-month goals are for the business, that did create, as you said, that direction of travel and got quite clear about what those, waypoints and finishing lines look like along the way and also at the end of that particular journey. And not one of the detractors or potential detractors was a problem. They I would say possibly were maybe those people that you mentioned in, about which way is the wind blowing. They saw that the rest of the room were really bought into this and just decided to go with it, and actually turned out to be really, really constructive contributors for the day, and really took ownership.
There's a couple of interesting points in there, because there's this analogy, isn't it? If you really want a highly bonded customer, irritate them, then satisfy them. That takes like 7 times as much emotional bonding to an organisation. And there's a little bit of that with the detractors. But one of the things that we found in organisations is you should actively seek out and engage with the detractors first. Yeah. Now, there's the sort of nice side of that, which doesn't make you feel good to change a detractor. It genuinely does, and that's a great story in terms of how it works. It also enables you to spot the true assassins in an organisation as well. right? And the other thing that you've got to understand when you're getting into change in organisations is that a lot of the detractors, quite a lot of them, are asking genuine concerns and questions because what they're trying to do is preserve the company, and they're trying to keep that company successful because they fundamentally like the company and want to be there. But that makes them change resistant, because as soon as we build something, we want to maintain it. So as soon as you turn up for a change, but they're a really useful source of information, and the reason for it is they're usually highly capable of mobilising objections to what you're trying to do. Form committees, produce reports that it won't work, understand all the politics in an organisation. And you've just given a beautiful example about how engaging them and taking them on a journey that opens them up to what you're trying to do, which is improve the company, which will be better for them, enables you to get over all those barriers really quickly. And if somebody's still sat in the room at the end of it going, look, I don't care, I don't want to work in this type of company, well then great. That's another piece of information that you've got at the end of the day. But I think much more than engaging the advocates, which I think a lot of people can do, because they just want to change stuff, engaging the detractors as a start point is very useful. And I think we, by accident, got into that because we're really interested in people and why people do stuff. And equally, we come from a business background where we didn't get told we could bring consultants in. You got given a departmental budget and told to deliver something within that budget. So your people were your raw material, and that's made us, I think that's been a huge benefit to us over the years as well.
There's a couple of things when either when I'm consulting to help with change or delivering it through training interventions, and one is that it's great to tell people about the vision, what we're trying to accomplish, how good is it going to be, in metrics, numbers, and in pictures and words and so on, but also to say, actually, if we didn't do this change, if we didn't go on this journey, what is the sense of discomfort or pain that we are going to be in and that we have to move away from? Because obviously you've got some people who love moving towards new exciting stuff, but some want to move away from either current discomfort or potential discomfort. And a great tool to marry with that, I found, is something called a force field analysis, where you basically just say, what are all the things that will help make this change successful, but what are all the barriers that we need to overcome? And you're allowing people the space then to say, well, we didn't do this properly last time and we won't be taught how to use it and we won't know what to do. Okay, so we'll make sure we do that. We make sure we give you the training, the education, the whatever it might be. It's an opportunity to spin all of that concern.
Absolutely. And that's a great example of some of the very simple frameworks that, one is a listening skill, by the way, which is I need to listen to people. It's amazing how often, and I think your process does this, Roger, as well, is that you've got a process that basically listens to people, reflects back to them, and then takes that to a board for approval. That's quite an interesting precept in its own life, because a lot of people just feel extracted from and used in some of these management processes. But that whole thing of, as a human behaviour point of view, I am motivated towards something, but I'm also motivated away from something. And that simple question of, where will we be if we don't do this? And we've had some start ones of that where somebody stood up, one of our team, and gone, we all won't have a job. So what are we going to do? And runs the numbers for them. And then they suddenly go, right, okay. Now that's an extreme example of a business that's in massive distress, losing millions a week. But those types of things are very useful for people to understand. As a human, I have a behaviour that drives me towards things or away from things, towards comfort and away from pain.
Yeah, very much so. I feel like we need to mention the elephant in the room around all this, AI. Now, what we're talking about is building alignment, the challenges in that, gaining buy-in, so on and so forth. Do you believe that there is a danger now with AI and everything that it offers that leaders could look to it to help them achieve, in their mind, alignment?
Yeah, and so I'm going to start at the top of this and go, if you were to break it into those simple pots of what's your why, what's your what, and what's your how, there is a very strong question to say some people will be trying to use this as a silver bullet shorthand to help them with the why. And I don't believe that that's a useful use of AI in isolation. In other words, you wouldn't go to it and go, I want to understand what's unique and different about this company, please. And it goes, oh, this is what's unique and different about it. Because it's regurgitating information to you that it's learned. So in terms of, is it useful from that point of view? It can cut down, but I'm still a strong believer that where those types of things fit in is the strengths it's got is the all-seeing eye, its lack of ego, and your ability to challenge it and get a response out of it. So it's like a great research assistant and enabler for you to accelerate alignment through an organisation. What it isn't is the opportunity for you as a leader to sort of subjugate or offset your responsibility to something else. And usually when we get into organisation, you sit leaders down and go, what is it that's unique and different? And that's the bit that can produce the foot shuffling moments on it. It's still their job to think about that. It's still their job to create it. You might market test it using these capabilities, but in no way should it be currently a replacement for those types of things. Would be my sort of simple start point answer to it. It has a role to play, but it's not to replace, it's to supplement some of these things because it's got some certain skills and capabilities that humans find not hard to replicate, but hard to maintain at scale.
Yeah, because I see, or certainly hear, about leadership teams who literally are putting their strategy in to whichever AI tool they choose and asking for it to generate a set of objectives and then, you know, and do that as it flows through the organization, which is a quick way of doing it. Definitely, it's a quick way of doing it, but the alignment just isn't there because, as you said earlier, people are being done to and to use your phrase, extracted from as part of that process. And that's my concern. I see some leadership teams, some management teams almost abdicating the responsibility for working through and defining what the next level looks like, and B, having those conversations with the next level as well.
Absolutely. And as you're saying that, I think there's a phrase in my mind. It says, look, AI should be used to take the grind out of this stuff so you can focus on the enjoyment of this stuff. And we mentioned outside of this, look, we're not being trite here. There's a huge social implication that comes with adopting AI. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the issues that surround trying to use it. But it's very good at doing all that mundane stuff, you know, looking at large volumes of information and trying to keep you on track. But it needs to be, still now, highly curated. It needs to have a why to be set against. It needs to have its responses, its queries highly moderated, and it needs to have its responses highly sense checked and contained as well. And it needs to have cross checks put into it. And I think if people, as you say, chuck me objectives or my strategy into it and go come up with objectives, what you'll get is the best average set of objectives that companies like yours are probably trying to run globally. And you go, brilliant. So I'm going to be at best average. And average is the thing nobody does. I mean, I've got a data background. It's like, brilliant. So you're going to be average, which means you're going to be quite bad at nearly everything. Well done. But that's if you use it the wrong way. And I agree with you. I think some people think, I'll get rid of my colleagues and I'll do this. Great. You're going to be on a race to the bottom, would be my argument. The other thing is, if you ask AI, you know, I mean, I asked mine, can it think? And it was quite interesting. I'm saying mine like I own it. I don't own it. But, you know, so one I use, and it basically said, can you think? And it said, I think I can think, but know that I can't. You know, there is stuff you should still be doing that I cannot do. But you may think I am doing that I am definitely not doing. Yeah. So, you know, you ask it and it'll give you the constraints it operates in as well. So, But without ego and without politics are two very powerful tools to have at your disposition, by the way, in an organisation. So,
So what was some great kind of bits in here around the engagement with different people in the organisation, those leaders at the top, helping them think about strategy alignment, how they communicate and ensure that alignment flows down, bringing the relevant and right use of technology into that. With some of those organisations you've worked with, where clearly they were experiencing problems, that's why they kind of brought you and Custerian in. What were the early signs of things turning around? How did they get some of those visible either visible sayings, visible observations, or visible metrics that made them realise that the work that was going on was making a difference?
So there's probably two very broad steps that we always undertake in an organisation. And Roger's going to love this first word, because the first thing we do is, how well does an organisation understand itself, and how aligned to that is it? So we do look at organisations holistically. And that's not because we necessarily get asked to always look at big stuff. But in general, our view is, by the time we've been asked to come in, there'll be something that is a failure point or an opportunity that can't be delivered, that's coming out of something that's happened further up. So chunking up from a behavioural point of view. So we chunk an organisation up. And just for the listeners on this, there are only 4 questions that you really need to start and consider, which is, what's unique and different about you, and how does it create value? Do the people understand that in a way that can contribute to it? Does the processes you run, formal and informal, support it or fight against it? And is it easy for customers to get off you what they want most and you do best? So we do a map like that to look across an organisation. The first output from that is how capable, how aligned and how capable are you of understanding that? And that clearly gives a range of metrics. And we do that just by asking the organisation about itself. Right? And obviously we've got external experience, which would be within these sectors and markets. These are what you would typically look to see. But that gives you the first point. So if you score 1 out of 9 with a load of supporting information around lack of purpose, clearly you've got a purpose issue in an organisation. The next thing we do is we take that information. So that's the first thing we always do. How far up this organisation, or where is this issue occurring? The next thing we do is we just drop into a series of engagements with colleagues, supported by metrics and observations around deconstructing that problem or that opportunity, and then assembling the solution to it with those colleagues. So that's almost like a consultant word salad, but we go, this is what we've understood that's wrong with this organisation. This is what it wants to get right. What do you think? Right? And there's a series of processes and lenses you can use for that. But what do you think? And you're using things like journey mapping, you're using things like observation, you're just using things like standard analysis to go, where is this all breaking down? What we're aiming to do is create a sense of ownership and engagement with the colleagues, with the problem, and get their voice heard in the solution. So when it comes back round, they see it's their solution. And therefore they're going, right, okay, we're not having change done to us, we're having change done with us. And that's our core metric for success. Do they feel as if they're more engaged and more capable as a consequence of delivering this? So we don't want to be around forever. We don't even necessarily want to get invited back in. We want to go, there you go. So that's how we judge, are we seeing success in an organisation? Clarity on the problem, increasing capability of solving the problem themselves.
And to your point of, we don't always want to be invited back. Sometimes we don't want to be. How do you make sure then that organisation is now self-sustainable? When they're looking at the next proposition, they don't find some of those old habits and behaviours and errors creeping back in?
Well, I mean, the honest answer to that is that's when they do ask us back in. And we've had one client that's been with us for 12 years. We prefer to come back for slightly different things if we're being engaged and looking at it. I think that one is a difficult one for me to give an absolute answer on, because what we tend to do is we'll get feedback after the event. We had one recently that went, look, I just want to let you know that since you were here and we finished that engagement 6 months ago, the team were asked to come and process map for a client. They went to the client, they process mapped and delivered the result for them. That was something they wouldn't have been capable of before. And whilst it wasn't a core part of what you did, we put into them process mapping skills because we need to be able to map the process as part of what we were doing. But we gave them all the tools and capabilities. We showed them how to do it. We demystified it and we got them to do it. So that's a sort of after the event sign that it's gone in. We do try and check back in and just say, how are things going on as well? But in general, the ability to understand, I suppose the argument will be, well, they don't ask us back, do they? But I think that's a bit of a cop-out, if I'm being blunt. You know what I mean?
So, just to help our listeners understand the challenges that you focus on a little bit more, what is it that an organisation might be experiencing that make them go, we need Simon and his team here?
Yeah, and so our usual one is it's the inability to get a solution to a problem that may well have been long-standing or may well have had other people looking at it. And that sounds a sort of odd thing to say. The reason why I say, or having had other people to look at it, we have been brought in when other consultancies of scale may well have been in the organisation. And they tend to leave it in one of, and there is a role for big consultancies, by the way, but they tend to leave it in one of two states. With a solution they can't deliver or understand, that's one, or such a depleted budget run or dissatisfaction within the team, of feeling like they've not been heard, that they can't actually get any momentum or galvanisation around that problem. So there is a sort of particular moment in problem solving where I think we're quite useful to be brought into it. I think the other thing is for organisations is it's where they have seen that they are trying to scale something and are unable to scale it. And we've had, probably for about the last 4 years, we've had quite a lot of requests and or being put in by scaling organisations that are trying to hit growth targets. And I think that's because you can't afford to run into a high fee, high engagement, slow duration model when you're trying to build stuff. You have to be clear about what we're trying to do, create ownership in the organisation and get on and create cadence. So they're probably some of it. We haven't got a vertical and we haven't got a market sector. I did say, look, you know, if you tell me to come and help you build a nuclear submarine, I'm probably going to go, no. But in general, all we're trying to do with an organisation is going, what's so unique and good about you that it delivers value? Do your colleagues understand it? Do your process support it? And can customers get it? We're doing that commercial drop through an organisation.
Yeah, there's so much of that rings true, and especially the point about attempting to scale to kind of match the growth. And it was only just yesterday I was with a group of founders on an accelerator program in Manchester that I'm doing some work with, and just trying to get them to understand the difference between growth and scaling. And the demands that growth places. And it was kind of like, well, yeah, we knew that, but we hadn't actually made the connection. And I think if you've got an appreciation of those demands, and I suppose you could say you need to face them first before you appreciate them. Hopefully, by doing a bit of advising, informing, I wouldn't say training because it wasn't training, but kind of opening their minds to these challenges that growth brings, then hopefully they can kind of maybe be a little bit preemptive around this, I suppose.
I think, of course, what we see, so for example, in high growth situations, there are some traits you see quite quickly. Strong founder-led type personalities, decisions don't get made unless there's one or two individuals in an organisation. Relatively unstructured, informal processes, single points of failure, limited alignment between the metrics, the measuring, and the actual criteria for success. And to go to your point about growth and scale, the revenue line grows, but the cost line grows faster. So there are some things that experience can be brought in to go, oh, hang on, can you just set yourself up for success here in terms of what you're trying to do? But I think from our point of view, and there's some stuff on it. There's a reason why when people go and look at self-help books, by the way, and they come away from them without getting into the why would you need to look at a self-help book? Clearly, you just need to help yourself. But there's a reason why a lot of the success stories talk about a process of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. They talk about all the big success stories around, can I get clarity on what the problem is or the objective is I'm trying to achieve? Do I understand so if you would think about purpose in the clearest sense you can, this goes back to what I've seen you do a lot of, Roger, you're just going, I am really trying to get you to be absolutely clear about what the purpose of this is, whether that's described as a North Star or an outcome or a proposition. I'm just trying to get to be really clear because people, they mass around simple things. Uber, which gets talked about, that was all about connecting customers with drivers to increase certainty. Got that, understand it. Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, by the way, too involved in data to be on Facebook. But when you look at things like, you go, that's about connecting and creating virtual communities. So you're trying to create really simple things. So when people say what it is that you do in an organisation, we're trying to create that simple thing. We're trying to get something that people can huddle round, become engaged in, and solve. Whether that be, how do I scale solar in Hungary? Whether that be, how do I engage with my BPO partner better? or whether that be, will customer centricity really improve my retention rate? You're trying to go, let's get clarity around that and get on with it. And I think that's where a lot of the work that you've done, because it involves that chunking up and goes, yeah, that's great. I'm not really trying to do customer metrics. I'm trying to look at customer centricity, aren't I? You know, they're the type of things that I think interest us and get us out of bed in the morning. And they all get under the broad church of it's a commercial problem, isn't it? Solved through your colleagues.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah. And when you think of that whole journey you've gone through, Simon, and Custerian's gone through of getting out of bed in the mornings to work with great companies, has there been any moments or a standout moment for you where you think, when you reflect on the work you've done, the process you go through, the steps you take organisation leaders through, that's been the biggest learning for you in how you go about doing it, that's made what you do even better over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me, which I'm lucky in a way, I had a very unusual management background, which we were run by a guy who was running military intelligence, who said, look, so we had a sort of sit-rep situation that went on every week, and we were allowed to look at different areas. So therefore, we got a fairly holistic approach to business. But equally, from my point of view, I'm quite a curious individual. So I don't view we're in an organisation to tell people stuff. I think we're in there to learn stuff, augment it, and give them some information back. And I think the learning that we got to is we've been around the houses on some of our frameworks and around the houses of our understanding. But what we've always been about is understanding there is an innate, inherent power in an organisation that is its colleagues. And it's not about all of them. It's about enough of them understanding something enough that they become excited about working with it and driving that forward. So the learning I would have is, we've almost gone to a degree full cycle, which is you cannot do change to organisations. You need to do change with organisations. And that's about the people in the organisation understanding why they're there and getting enjoyment out of it, which again sounds a bit like a consultant word saddle. And I do apologise for it. But I think from my point of view, we're all about people. We're all about creating and giving opportunity for people to deliver the commercial goals. I had a conversation with a guy who was heavily into sustainability, and I used to say the most sustainable thing you can do is create an enduring business, because that puts money in people's pockets, that enables them to live the lives they need to lead. Absolutely. And serve a role in a community. So that I think is what we've learned. Being curious about people is a great place to be.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I think I can identify a lot with that, and I'm sure you probably can as well, James.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think what I've loved about that answer kind of, for me, kind of summarizes the conversation we've just had in this episode around, the problems that companies are experiencing: misalignment, misunderstanding, fear of change, just wanting to keep today, the harmony of today, the steadiness of today, but actually by great communication, both from questioning skills, the listening skills, and involving people, how you much easier get people on board with, actually, we've got a problem and we've got to solve this. If we want to be successful and move away from where we're at now, then let's all be involved. I think it's really brought that to life for me. Thank you, Simon. If people want to understand more about Custerian, kind of find out more, reach you, contact you, where can they go, Simon?
So, well, the best thing to do is email me direct, I would suggest, which is simon@custerian.com, CUSTERIAN.com. I did create the name, by the way, with help somewhere. I think, oh God, can we not get something that's easy to spell? But anyway, but that's the best thing to do. Just get on that. And we've obviously got a website, but direct emails would be good, I think. And, nothing expected. I very much enjoy speaking to people about things that they've got on. I'm not expecting it to go anywhere. Very much up just for initial discussions, because I'm a curious individual about stuff. I like to learn.
Yeah, I think that's a great trait for lots of people, to be curious. Simon, brilliant. Thank you. Your details will be in the show notes. To our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning into this latest episode, and we look forward to bringing you another one very soon. So thank you very much.